Hello and welcome to Government with Dr. Turner. Today we're going to take a look at federalism and identify the ways in which federalism divides power between national and state governments. Federalism is a system where power and authority are divided between different levels of government. Federalism in the United States was a compromise for how power should be distributed between the national and state governments. Remember, the Constitutional Convention was trying to improve on the Articles of Confederation. The system is right there in the title of the document. It was the Articles of Confederation. It created a confederation or a confederal system. If a country creates a confederal system, the local units retain almost all of their sovereignty. The central government has only as much power as the local units will allow. The 13 states were unwilling to give any meaningful power to the national government. The Confederation was not working, at least according to those with power in the former colonies. It simply wasn't producing the America that they envisioned. The other way to distribute government power, a unitary system, was what the colonists had fought a revolution to leave. In a unitary system, all important decisions are made by the central government. Great Britain was a unitary state. All important decisions were made by the king. Even today, an example of a country with a unitary system of power distribution is the United Kingdom, where all power is concentrated in the national government. Since the Articles were not working as hoped, and they didn't want to return to an all-powerful national government, the founders created a system in the middle ground between unitary and confederal, a federal system. Federalism can be most accurately defined as a political system in which power is divided between the central and regional governments. Each level has some independent power, and the plan for how power is divided is contained in the Constitution. You can find the plan in Article 1 and in the amendments. In Article 1, Section 8, the Constitution lists 18 specific powers that are given to Congress. The congressional abilities specifically listed there are called the enumerated powers. One problem with the Articles of Confederation is that the document offered no flexibility. The founders' solution to that problem was the addition of the necessary and proper clause. This clause comes at the end of the enumerated powers and states that Congress may also do things that are necessary and proper when executing the listed powers. This greatly increases the flexibility of the Constitution. It is sometimes referred to as the elastic clause because it allows congressional powers to expand or contract as needed for each situation. The necessary and proper clause is also quite vague. It was hotly debated during the fight for ratification. Even today, opponents of strong federal power complain the Supreme Court has interpreted the necessary and proper clause of the Constitution so broadly that there are very few restrictions on what Congress can do. Because power was being divided between the national and state governments, one could predict that conflicts might arise. The Supremacy Clause was included in the Constitution to resolve some of these conflicts. The clause states that the Constitution and laws made in accordance with it are the supreme law of the land. When national and state laws conflict, national laws will be followed. Powers that were not given to the national government were assumed to be reserved for the states. This is one reason why the Constitution says very little about the powers of the states. Anti-federalists were mistrustful of this assumption and insisted state powers be addressed as part of the Bill of Rights. The constitutional provision that the states have all powers not given to the national government is contained in the 10th Amendment. An example of a power that the U.S. Constitution reserves to the states is to ratify constitutional amendments. Powers that are exercised by both the national and state governments are known as concurrent. In the American system of federalism, examples of concurrent powers include the ability to write and enforce laws. In the United States, we have implemented federalism in two different ways: dual federalism and cooperative federalism. In dual federalism, state and national governments are separate from each other and carry out independent functions. Dual federalism implies that the national government and the states have separate spheres of influence. For the first 150 years of the Constitution, states did nearly all of the governing. Most national government functions were to assist commerce. The national government had almost no direct impact on individual citizens. The system of dual federalism established a commercial republic in America because the function of the federal government was to promote and assist commerce. The arrangement of dual federalism seems to be what the Constitution writers had intended. There was a small role for national government to help establish political stability in early years. People who were building businesses benefited from law and order, currency, roads, railroads, and more. At the same time, business was protected by the federal government from most regulation by states. Under cooperative federalism, state and national powers are interdependent, requiring the cooperation of each other to get things done. Cooperative federalism is the term used to explain how the state and the national governments share responsibilities to solve problems. We will focus on how states and the national government work together in another video. Federalism brings several advantages with it. One advantage is that it allows for public policy experimentation. If the nation is facing a problem, different states can experiment with possible solutions. Then the policy that works best can be expanded to national implementation. Another advantage is that states can act when the national government does not. A good example is the American response to the coronavirus pandemic. In the absence of a clear national response, states could make decisions based on local conditions. Federalism puts real, actual power at the local level, allowing states to move quickly and decisively when needed. Citizens can also have more impact at the local level, so if states have real power to create policy, citizen participation is more meaningful. One disadvantage of federalism is that you could lose what we call economies of scale. A national program can be operated with one administrative office, but state policies might require 50 different administrative offices, with many of those offices duplicating effort. Another disadvantage is local prejudices can find their way into law. For example, it is a continuing fight to keep states with racist histories from incorporating those perspectives into voter registration and election laws. Let's review. The portion of the Constitution that is used to justify Congress having many powers that are not explicitly mentioned in the document is called the Necessary and Proper Clause. The principle that declares that national laws will be followed when national and state laws conflict is found in the Supremacy Clause. Compared to the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution is vaguely worded, probably on purpose. The Supreme Court has been crucial in establishing the limits of the Necessary and Proper Clause, the Supremacy Clause, the 10th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. Dual federalism implies that the national government and the states have separate spheres of influence. Cooperative federalism is the term used to explain how the state and the national governments share responsibilities to solve problems. One advantage of federalism is that public policies can be experimented within the states. A disadvantage of federalism is that it permits local prejudices to find their way into state and local laws.